Right now, courthouses around the country are deciding whether they need to close because of the coronavirus. We're all experiencing it and happening right now in our trial, Florida versus Andre Warner. The judge received an email about whether his trial should continue. He is now off the bench. I believe he's talking to the chief judge of the county, that's Polk County Courthouse, and they are going to come to a decision on whether this trial goes forward. Let me bring in my legal attorneys, Mike Panella, Melissa Redmond. Mike, I hear you're very anxious to voice your opinion on this. Go for it.
I think this is, I do. I think this is a huge deal, and I think we just got a glimpse into both parties and what they want to do about it. I mean, look, jeopardy attached in Florida the moment that jury was sworn, and remember, this is a death-eligible case. What this is happening here is this email is saying, hey, if we suspend this trial, it's suspended until March 30th. And I think it's absolutely in the defense's advantage to have this thing suspended, because what would happen if all of a sudden something happened to one of those jurors or two of those jurors? We're talking about this could go from a death eligible case to a case that they can't even seek the death penalty anymore if something happens to that already sworn jury panel. And you heard the state saying, hey, I want to think about this. I want to voice my opinion to the chief judge myself. It's a considerable expense to the state of Florida and very difficult to get this amount of witnesses together the way they have. So it's going to be totally inconvenient for them. And the defense has everything to gain, in my opinion, if this thing gets postponed. And I think that's going to be the arguments we're about to see.
Melissa, what are your thoughts on what's happening right now in Polk County, as well as across the country? Okay, there are millions of trials that are going through this right now. This trial is not special. It's happening all over the place. Melissa?
Yeah, courthouses are shutting down all across the country. Judges are advising, chief judges are advising Superior Court and state court judges, if at all possible, to just keep people away from the courthouse for safety issues. I would have to agree, in a case like this, in a death penalty case where it took, I believe, 5 days or so to pick a jury.
Right.
They've joined issue. They've already started calling witnesses. They have people in custody. They have to be transported back and forth from the jail. I would imagine that both parties at this point would want to go ahead and try to finish the trial.
Do you think, Mike, talk a little bit more about, you mentioned double jeopardy and how that attaches, and you as a criminal defense attorney, what your argument specifically would be with the double jeopardy issue?
Well, I wouldn't be saying this exactly to the judge. I would just be hoping that this thing gets postponed, because the jury's been impaneled. All right. So jeopardy attached at that moment when that happened here in Florida. So if I'm a defense attorney on this case and I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, a lot can happen in 2.5 weeks. And if we can't get all of these jurors back, we're going to have some serious jeopardy concerns. And I would be arguing, hey, my client has already been exposed to jeopardy on this case. Yeah. The jury's been sworn. It's not my fault that you can't get the same jury panel back together, and it's going to be a mess. And I think that that could actually play to the defense's long game here. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think that there might be a difference of opinion. I can also appreciate the fact that both parties would just want this to be done and over with already.
Sure.
But at the same time, there might be advantages to the defense if this gets postponed.
And especially now that there are only 2 alternates. Before there were 3, now there's only 2. Melissa, do you think that sequestration could be an option, a viable mechanism to finish this trial faster?
I think they will have to look at the logistics of whether or not they will be able to sequester everyone and the additional personnel that will be involved in that. I do think it is an option. I would have to disagree, though. I don't think it would necessarily mean that the defendant would be subject to double jeopardy. I think there's a way that the court can handle it. They may declare a mistrial and say it's nobody's fault. It was just one of those circumstances and start completely over. Or if they poll the jury and see if everyone could resume in 2 weeks, and that's not going to be a prejudice to the defendant, continue after that 2-week period that the chief judge is asking everyone to kind of stay away. I think there's a way it can be done without subjecting the defendant to interjecting any double jeopardy argument.
Okay, but Mike, there is that danger, right? Like if there is a pause on this trial, a 2-week pause, number one, we are dealing with this coronavirus issue. So someone, God forbid, could get sick. Number two, other life things happen, right? Other life intervenes and something could prevent not having a full jury. Because again, there's only 2 alternates. That's what makes me very nervous.
That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, my understanding is you've got 12 plus 2, so there should be
Yes.
14 right now, but you need 12
Yes.
in order to actually move forward for the death phase. So we've got the guilt phase. That's what we're dealing with right now. But if you go to the penalty phase, let's say he actually is found guilty, you need 12. And
Yeah.
2.5 weeks, if they lose 3, game over. And that's what I'm trying to say. Now, I don't disagree with my colleague. There are other ways to handle this as far as declaring it a mistrial ahead of time and all of that. But if the idea is postponing this thing until March 30th and trying to get this panel back together, I think there's going to be issues. And that's not the only issue. You still have the state right now. They're on a roll. It's their case.
Yeah.
They do not want to stop right now when they are steamrolling right now. The defense hasn't even gone yet. So it's also to the defense's advantage to pump the brakes on the state, which is another reason besides jeopardy concerns that I think the two are going to have differences of opinion.
Mike, what do you think about sequestration?
Well, I mean, I think that the fact that they haven't had this conversation with the jurors yet, and it's been a week.
Well, actually, they were planning to, Mike. So they were planning to have the sequestration talk at the end of today, but then he got the email. So I think that put everything off. I believe they are back in court. So Mike and Melissa, thank you so much. We'll talk later.
Thank you.
We go forward. We are so close to finishing at least this portion of the trial. The state intends to rest.